Hello, everybody, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be logged in to. My name is Michael Kramer, and I am presenting today on behalf of Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation for the month of March, our monthly webinar. And as you can see, and as you registered for, we're going to be looking at document control and also control of records. So appreciate everybody being with us this afternoon. Hope you find this presentation very helpful. So as always, this webinar is being recorded, as all of our past webinars. So we have a wealth of information on our website. Feel free to visit www.pjlabs.com. You'll see a special tab just for webinars. Go in there. You can go back and re-listen to this one, or if a colleague missed it, can also go back and review the presentation today. You also have the option of obtaining the slides from this webinar and past webinars, which we have listed on our website. So currently, I sure hope everybody can hear me. You all, however, are muted. However, free to utilize the question tab, and we'll go back and review those at the conclusion of today's session. Please keep your questions regarding today's topic, which is Section 8.3, Doc Control, and Section 8.4, Control of Records, as it applies to 17025, double knot 2017. So we're going to start out looking at the control of management system documents. So document control. So we can look at that as a controlled processes or practices for the creation, review, modification, insurance, distribution, and accessibility of documents. So what are we referring to when we refer to documents as opposed to records? A document is anything that tells a person in your laboratory or organization what to do or how to do it. As noted in 17025, as a note, this can be things that include such documents as policy statements, of course, your procedures, quality manuals, supporting procedures in conjunction with your 17025 compliant quality management system. Could be specification documents. Perhaps you're using manufacturer's instructions, calibration tables, charts, textbooks, posters, notices, memorandums, drawings, plans, etc. So these can be on various mediums such as hard copy or digital. So all these items here will come under the realm of document control. What about software? We'll have to cover that during a separate webinar, but these requirements can be crosswalked over to in that area as well. However, we have that covered, not we. 17025 has it covered under Section 711, where it pinpoints control of data and information management. So we're going to look at the very first requirement. The laboratory shall control the document, internal and external, that relates to the fulfillment of this document. So I sort of want to focus on the internal and external part. So we referenced on the first slide there what would be considered a document. Internal, of course, are things created within your organization that you can revise, you can update. Just have to ensure that they're being controlled. These are also, as I mentioned, any sort of procedure that you may have in place in support of your 17025 compliant quality management system, and applicable forms. So a form by itself is a document that the form can be updated and changed. For example, you may have forms you use for corrective actions or internal audits, have to assure they're being controlled. It also includes external documents. So these are things you bring from the outside world in that you utilize, perhaps for your testing or calibration protocol. You've adopted procedures that can be based on things such as the USP, ASTM, ISO standards. I also have listed in there our policies, so a sample of an external document. So if you're accredited with Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation, as you know, we have policy documents PL123, PL4, SOP3 for symbol. These are considered external documents that you need to be in compliant with, and need to assure that these are being controlled and you have access to can demonstrate that you have access to the current revision levels at all applicable places of use. So I just want to clarify internal and external. I'm not going to say often, but I do sometimes see internal documents being controlled very nicely. However, the external documents sometimes will be forgotten in the shuffle, be it being controlled, as you can see down there. A procedure or master list are tools that can be used. However, they're not required. But if they're being utilized, they should be utilized for both internal and external documents. So just wanted to emphasize the external part there. So there is no requirement for a procedure. There is no requirement for a master list. However, if you are using a procedure or a master list, you should be compliant to those requirements that you put on yourselves within your quality system. However, the 2017 version of 17025 is more in tune with today's electronics. Flexibility is given on how compliance can be maintained. So during an internal audit, if you are an internal auditor, or you may be asked this during your external audit, how do you control your documents, both internal and external? Have a lot of flexibility how they can be presented. It could be shown within a procedure. It can be presented through a sophisticated electronic document LIMS system, which links the entire quality management system together electronically. Or it can also be presented through a simple but effective master documents list, which needs to be updated and kept current and up to date. Once again, you have flexibility. However, it can be presented through various means. Often, if you're an internal auditor or if you're being subjected to your reaccreditation assessment through PJLA, documents are subject to the sampling protocol, and maybe act randomly to pull up a sample of an internal or external document and show how it's controlled to assure that everyone has access to the latest and the greatest document that you're working off of. Requirement 832, the laboratory shall ensure documents are approved for adequacy prior to issue by, and I sort of bolded, authorized personnel. So of course, when documents are updated initially or when they're revised, they need to be reviewed and approved. And it says by authorized personnel. What does that mean? I want to just reference a clause here from section 6.2, which is a section on personnel. It's not specific in the section on document control as to the authorization of that personnel. Just assume it's going to fall under that clause there. Under 6.2.1, all personnel of the laboratory, either internal or external, that could influence the laboratory activity shall be impartial, be competent, and work in accordance with the laboratory management system. So this would include those folks that are updating, reviewing, and improving the documents, and are basically also assuring compliance is being maintained to this section of the standard. So the laboratory shall ensure that B, documents are reviewed and updated as necessary. So just for your internal documents, for example, they're living documents. They should be updated, revised to reflect how your organization is currently maintaining compliance to the standard. I have an example here, and I have seen this before doing assessments. Looking at a organization's quality management system, and I sort of scratched my head. Wow, they're still doing this. Using an external hard drive, which is kept in a fireproof safe in the quality management manager's office. Well, that can still be done, which and still maintaining compliance to protecting your documents and backing them up, assuring that they're not going to be destroyed. However, if I get a response, oh, we don't do that anymore. We now are being automatically backed up on the cloud. So in that instance, it should be written to maintain how the system is currently running. So like I said, your internal documents, they're living documents. I'm sure they were written once to assure that in a manner to reflect at that point in time how your organization was maintaining compliance. However, they need to go back and be periodic reviewed. I do mention down there in the sectional management review, there is an input requirement for suitability of policies and procedures. That's a good time to go back and look and see if do a review of your internal documents. Hey, does anything need to be updated or changed? For external documents, is it the latest? Assure that the current, in this example, ASTM standard, the reference year is 2020 there. Hopefully you all can see that's still current. Have to assure that it's been has not been updated or revised, and then there's a new version of that external documents. Our policies at PJLA, they're available on our website. It's the latest and the greatest. We make every effort hopefully to send word out through update notifications when we do update our PL 123, PL 4, and SOP 3 documents. A32C, changes in the current revision status of the document are identified. So you have to show when you update a document the status as far as a revision level and what changes were made. Often I see a revision history within the document. That's great. That's good. That can be utilized to maintain compliance to this particular clause. However, it's not required that it's not required to be maintained within the actual document anymore. So again, for example, you're going from revision 1 to revision 2. You have to currently document the updated revision level, which would be revision 2 on the new document, and somewhere along the line you have to show what was revised or what was changed via the revision history, document control log, or whatever avenue you elect to present that. The laboratory shall ensure that relevant versions of applicable documents are available at points of use, and where necessary, their distribution controlled. So again, documents can be electronic, they can be hard copied. I just have to ensure that they're available at the needed points of use. I'm a calibration assessor. I'm the calibration program manager. A lot of our labs have technicians going out in the field, going on customer sites and doing calibrations. I often, as an assessor, would like to see them out in the field. Hey, let me see you pull up the procedure that you're using. That's something they should have access to via on their laptop or on a, could be in a binder, but have to be able to show that they have those documents available to them as are required here in 832D. A32E, documents are uniquely identified. So you cannot have to be able to differentiate one document from the other. So perhaps you have a separate doc procedure for document control or a separate procedure for records control. You have to have some sort of unique identifier within the document. Could be as simple as SOP 123 or SOP 124, whatever you elect to do. Or it could be a more sophisticated barcode type of system that, as you see depicted there, just have to ensure that the documents are uniquely identified. A32F, the unintended use of obsolete documents is prevented and suitable identification is applied to them if they are retained for any purposes. So if you are completely electronic, when you go, I know you probably have permissions of who can see what. Perhaps the quality manager has access to the old files and the end user only has access to the current files, which is perfectly fine. However, those old files should be suitably marked, perhaps through an archive folder. If you're using paper copies, and perhaps you still may have a couple old external documents around for whatever reason, for references or see what was in place 4 or 5 years ago for reference only, or perhaps just stamped obsolete. However, during an assessment, if there was a out of date, current, or internal or external document that happens to be out within the calibration activities, would expect to see that marked or stamped. Okay, that's basically it for document control. I'm going to switch gears here now, and we're going to look at section 8.4, which are control of records. So with this section here, we're referring to items that shows what's been done, as opposed to how are a document, as opposed to a document which shows how something is to be done. So I like to put it as the pen, when the pen hits the paper, it becomes a record, or as the if the fingers hit the keyboard, hey, you've then created a record. So bear with me one moment. All right. So what are we referring to? Record. What are we referring to here? Records. Some examples may include what I have documented here, or recorded here, I should say. Could include things like meeting minutes, customer reports, purchase orders, completed data sheets, your intermediate checks on your equipment would all be considered records. Your complaint records, you may have a complaint log or a complaint form. Once you receive and add to them, they become records. Audit results, hey, management reviews, corrective action, your completed customer surveys, contracts. So whenever you see the word recorded in the standard, you're going to be creating a record. Would come under the realm of records control, maybe technical records or quality related records. Example they're given under 743. handling of test and calibration items. Upon receipt of test or calibration, deviations from specified conditions shall be recorded. Hence, you're going to make a record there. Just wanted to mention, hey, records come up twice in the standard. We have technical records under 7.4. What we're going to go on over today is section 8.4, which is more quality related. These are for option B candidates. 7.4 is for the records related directly to your calibration and testing activities, i.e. your reports, for example, where you need be, you can go back and duplicate the test or calibration, identifying all the significant contributors who did it, what equipment was used, those sorts of things. They'll come under the realm of 7.5. What we're looking at under 8.4 is quality related records. Those folks that are 9001, you would be considered an option B candidate. This would be covered in that standard. If you're not 9001, it comes under your option A status. So it's reviewed. Section 7.5 is not considered option A or B. It's going to be assessed separately under the technical portion of your assessment or audit. 8.4.1, the laboratory shall. Probably heard me say this before. That word shall is a requirement, should is a recommendation, may is a permission. So the laboratory shall establish and retain legible records to demonstrate fulfillment of the requirements of this document. This document being 17025. So of course your records that you maintain, you should be able to read them. If you are still maintaining hard copies, they should be protected, of course, outside of the elements, hard file cabinet. Some examples of records we're talking about. When you see in the standard retain records, such as under 8.8.2 internal audits, you have to retain records as evidence of completion of this audit program and audit results. You have to keep those records, and they have to be legible records, and it has to show fulfillment to the standard that you are auditing yourself to the requirements of the standard. Same with non-conforming work. An example there is listed, the laboratory shall retain records for non-conforming work as specified in 7.10.1, B through F. So if that situation reared its ugly head, would be expected to see record of what was done to rectify that situation. All right, this is a relatively short standard, but there's only has two clauses in it. I said section of the standard. 8.4.2, there's a mouthful there. The laboratory shall implement the controls needed for identification. Hey, what is it? Storage, where is it kept? Protection and backup. How is it maintained and perhaps backed up every so often, hopefully at least on a daily basis, to prevent it is being maintained electronically to prevent loss of records. Archiving. Hey, once you're finished with the record, where does it go? Retrieval. Where do you get the record from? Retention times. Retention times, that could be, I like to specify, doesn't have to be exact. Say a broad 5 years or 10 years. Just a simple minimal retention time is appropriate. You can always keep records longer, but not less than your specified retention times that you put in place. And disposal of its records. So once that reaches retention time, standard still requires you to have controls in place for the disposal of the records, be it hard records shredded, taken off site somewhere, to delete it, and if they're maintained electronically. The laboratory shall retain records for a period consistent with its contractual obligations. So I would say you may have statutory requirements that your organization comes under, where you have to maintain records of testing or calibration that your organization has performed. Those organizations that are accredited by PJLA, hey, all the records maintained between within the accreditation cycle, 2 years from each time we come on site, they're fair game. So have to retain those records. You have to maintain retention times, but keep those things in mind. Access to the record shall be consistent with confidentiality commitments, and records shall be readily available. So again, your section on confidentiality. Hey, the records, your particularly those that are pertaining to your customers, have to assure that they're being maintained in a manner that would preserve the confidentiality of that organization or individuals that are maybe documented or recorded on that particular records. And during an assessment or an internal audit, if he asks to see a record, hey, let me see your last internal audit, or hey, let me see your last management review, they should be readily available. So once again, even though a procedure is not required, this can all be demonstrated, or a procedure can be utilized as a tool for fulfilling this requirement. I have seen sort of like the old master list that was required, and I'm still seeing utilized for documents. Often we'll see a sort of a same sort of list maintained for records that would address the storage, protection, backup, archiving, retrieval, retention, and disposal of records. So just have to implement the controls needed. I believe this is going to bring us to the end. So thank you. Again, hopefully I came through loud and clear. You have a space provided for submitting questions. So bear with me one moment. I will see what we have here. So if anything comes to mind here, please submit it. You should have a tab. Right now I don't have anything, so we'll give it some time. Appreciate everyone listening in. In the meantime, let me go to the next slide here, which is our next webinar. So if you haven't already, would need to mark your calendar for Thursday, April 18th. It's going to be the next webinar. I'm going to present it. It's going to be in the areas of impartiality and confidentiality. They are the first two sections of the standard. So, and they do come up also in other areas of the standard, impartiality and confidentiality, particularly under personnel. Getting a few questions here. When you audit 8.4, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for compliance to the shalls. And it's kind of short and sweet there. Section 8.4 only has 2 clauses. So you want to sample, you want to, if you're doing an internal audit, when you get to this section, sample some records. Sample, assure they can be pulled up and readily available, which is required in 8.4.2, that they are established and legible as specified in 8.4.1. And as I stated before, both with document control and records control, the organization is very flexible on how they have controls in place for the identification, storage, protection, backup, archiving, retrieval, retention, and disposal records. So if I'm doing an assessment or an internal audit, may randomly select a sample of some records that would be maintained and have the organization, if it's not specified in a procedure, have them demonstrate how those particular items specified in 842 would be presented for a sampling of particular records. What about regulatory requirements for disposal of records that is outside of the laboratory control? Well, if it's outside of your control, I would just specify what records they are. I've never really come across that situation before within your quality management system, and just put the onus on the regulatory agency that has that control where those records are. I'm not sure if I'm reading it again. What about regulatory records for disposal of records that is outside of laboratory controls? Well, if that's how this is just what you do with the records internally there. If you have to keep a record for so much, excuse me, for a specific retention time, and then from that period it goes to a regulatory agency after so many years, hey, once it leaves your control and goes to the regulatory agency, I would specify that. I hope I'm hitting the nail on the head. All right, let's see here. Okay, we're referring to 7.5, 7.11 already covers records. So what is 8.4 implying? Well, 7.5, I believe I mentioned this during the presentation, is technical records. So these are the records when you are doing your testing and calibration. These are records that you maintain where need be. You can go back and duplicate the testing or calibration, identifying and maintaining all the records necessary to repeat the process. So that is covered under 7.5. And what's the other section here? 7.11 is strictly for control of data management. So this basically, if you look at the requirements there, it's pretty much, if you look at it, a lot of it can be crosswalked over, but it's just pertaining to electronic records, backing up the laboratory system used for the collection, processing, reporting, storage, retrieval. It's just the electronic data information system that a laboratory uses to maintain records. And then 8.4 is pertaining to specific, I would say, quality related records. Internal records, complaints, corrective action, whether they're being maintained electronically or hard copies. These requirements would pertain to quality records. However, you could see a lot of crosswalk between section 7.11 and 8.4 there. Now, I'm afraid we don't provide a training certificate for these, but you are more than welcome to type up your own. Did you say 2 years was the requirement to keep records? We keep at least 1 year on site and 3 to 5. I said 2 years for Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. I was just giving an example there. When we come on site, which is a reaccreditation every 2 years, our assessors can go back between the last time we were on site and sample records, documents, reports within that cycle. Would you say that an organization that is certified to 9001 automatically meets the requirements for document management and records? I would say yes. If you are 9001 through a registrar, you would be considered an option B candidate. So that is basically stating that section 8, which both of these are document control 8384. Could you explain controlled versus uncontrolled documents? In controlled documents are those documents you maintain within your system. An uncontrolled document would be a document for whatever reason. If you was to email one of your customers, perhaps wanted to see a copy of your procedure you utilize, and you should specify this on if it is distributed to an outside source, that's an uncontrolled document. So in other words, that's a snapshot in time. You're going to send your client the current document at that time. However, it's revised, you're going to control that document. You're going to update the revision. You're going to identify what was changed, and those points, those places that where the document are used at will now have access to the new document, whereas an uncontrolled version would be something that was perhaps printed and mailed outside, or even sent as an attachment to an organization where they're, like I said, that's just that snapshot in time that a year from now, 2 years from now, that document may go through under other revision, where internally your folks would have the latest and the greatest, but that individual would not. If someone is asking for a copy of a document, is that controlled or uncontrolled? I would say that would be uncontrolled, unless you do maintain a list of who receives controlled or uncontrolled documents, which means if that document is updated, that individual would be sent the latest and the greatest. But typically when you send an individual one of your documents, one of your internal procedures, protocol, whatever, that is an uncontrolled version that's going out. Can I repeat the terminology? Shall, may. Shall is a requirement. Should is a permission. May is a permission. That was the three, I believe, that I specified here during this presentation. Alrighty, well, that's going to conclude the questions. Had very good questions here. I hope I hit the nail on the head as far as understanding and conveying my answers to your questions there. So I will, once again, our next webinar will be April 18th. Again, if you want to go back and listen to this one, or perhaps had a colleague that may have missed it, or you would like the slides from today's webinar, you can acquire those from our website, www.pjlabs.com. So appreciate everyone logging in wherever you're logging in from, and look forward to presenting again next month.